Gaming and BS episode 206. Coming to you Wednesday, August 29th, 2018. Welcome to Gaming and BS. I'm Sean.
And I'm Brett. Welcome to the show. Welcome back, folks. Glad to have you all on board. Who? How you doing, Sean?
Doing fantastic, Brett. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Not too bad, huh?
Yeah. It's hot. It's muggy. I don't like that. I want it to be cold.
My father-in-law would call it mudgy.
Mudgy? Yes,
It's
I've heard that
mudgy
too.
out. Yeah.
Yes. It's not fun. You sit outside and you were in crotch soup. It's just very uncomfortable.
Meatball stew, baby.
It's very-
That's what it's all
and
about.
as we just lost the other half of the listeners we had. All
That's
right,
right.
then. So, shall we just get into this, man?
Yeah. Do we have any announcements other than the usual?
Other than usual, Gamehole, EverCon, QCC. QCC's soon. That's like next week type of thing by the time the sucker drops.
They should have a LARP at Niagara Falls and see if somebody goes over in a barrel.
It's the barrel LARP. It's difficult and dangerous, but you sign the right paperwork, you're in. It's all good.
Barrel LARP. It's
Barrel.
a special event.
It's Hobbit themed, so it's the Barrel Rider LARP. So it's all good.
Oh, sweet.
It keeps the fantasy theme going. It's all good.
I would totally sign up for that.
I signed you up for that.
I wish I could be there to partake in that.
Oh, I'll make sure you're there. Don't worry.
Okay, well. All right, then.
Arg. All right. So do we want to do the other thing now, or do we want to just go into random encounter now?
We'll go into random encounter.
All right, we'll do that. You do the other thing.
All right.
That was quasi mysterious and useless.
Random encounter. All right. We got a voicemail from Chris Schorb.
Awesome.
Hey, Brett and Sean, it's Chris Schorb calling in reaction to, I guess this is episode 204. I'm behind by an episode or two, so I think it's episode 204. Wanted to react to Blake Ryan Batman's voicemail, and first of all, I think he's spot on. There's something to me that just feels inherently unfair about the 3d6 right down the line, or even just random rolling compared to points buy system like GURPS or Vampire the Masquerade or what have you. There is something to be said about playing into some of those foibles and frailties of a character. But I'm playing in a D&D campaign where we rolled down the line, and there's a character whose stats were just across the board, except for, I think, charisma, and he's playing a rogue, and I'm playing a monk, and so charisma doesn't really matter much, but I think charisma is the only place where things are slightly different, where I got a 10 and he got a 9 or something like that. So, and like Blake Ryan said, it doesn't feel as fun. That said, there is a game, and I think I tout this game a lot, maybe not on my voicemail to you guys, but the Apocalypse Engine games. First of all, Dungeon World is the one I'm most familiar with. It does have a points buy system or a assignment of attributes. But in addition, when you fail, really interesting stuff happens. It's not just, you rolled a failure, that's it, your turn's over, move on to the next guy. No, when you fail, the narrative, the story responds to that failure in a very interesting way. That's what makes the Powered by the Apocalypse games so great, at least the ones that I've played. And in addition, you've got that middle ground where you can fail forward or you can succeed with a cost, that 7 and 9 roll. So overall, I don't know if this is a year of the Brett or year of the Sean, but maybe we'll have a month of the Blake. So that's it. Thanks, guys. Keep up the good work. Love the show. Bye.
What do you think about that, Brett?
I don't like Dungeon World that much. No, I'm kidding. I'm not a big Apocalypse World guy.
Why, Brett? Why is that, Brett?
I don't want to insult everybody who likes us, Sean. No,
you can have an opinion and base it upon
I do have
something.
an opinion. So my opinion with it is that basically it feels to me very much every time I play it that you can't do it, you can kind of do it, you can kind of do a little better, and then finally you get to do it. I also often feel that I can argue the fact that I can justify danger for everything, because I can argue that in. And I despise the don't speak the move thing. That drives me fucking bananas. I don't know why, but it drives me bananas.
Well, I was setting you up, but it wasn't particularly for that angle.
Well, that was my thing.
Well, I thought your thing would be that you can still narrate a failure.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You can still do that in other games, although it's not necessarily a mechanical piece.
Yeah, no, I think what it's trying to do, my experiences with it have been, what it is trying to do, it does very well. I just don't like the way it does it. It doesn't work for me, and I don't know why. I played very little of it, so that means I need to play more of it so I can figure it out.
So
kind of like when we had Christian and Ron on a while back, and we were talking about Savage Worlds. I need to play more Savage Worlds to find out if I really like it, right? You can't play a game once and say, oh, that game fucking blew. I mean, you got to give it a couple tries. You got to get other game masters, you got other people to do stuff for you.
So, Brett.
Yes, Sean.
I'm going to ask you a question here.
Okay.
So, since Christian and Ron were on the show, we talked about Savage Worlds.
Yeah. Have I played it since then?
How many times have you played since then?
None. I've not had anybody who's been able to run it for me. When I've been available to game, I've had both Christian and Ron said, hey, Brett, I'll run a game for you. Now, granted, I have not been available to run or play, I've not been anywhere where someone is running a game that I've had the time to get in on it. When the time comes, if I like GameholeCon or I'm out at QCC, if I can find one, I'm going to hop in because I want to give it another go.
So when you go to QCC, the Sneeze runs Dungeon World pretty.
Absolutely. He's the one I played Dungeon World under. I had fun. I just on the mechanics. Like I said, the mechanic. If I look at it from like a really strict mechanic-y thing in Brett's little brain, I'm like, this doesn't wow me. Doesn't blow my hair back.
It's okay. It's all good.
Well, no, and I had fun playing it. I also played Fate Accelerated with Tom Flanagan running Dresden Files. I don't like Fate Accelerated that much. It wasn't that much fun as a system. The game was a blast, though. I had fun with Tom and Sneezak and everybody else we were playing with, Kevin and Andy and whatever. It was great. It was a great game. The system, meh. Didn't wow me. But I've only played it once, so I need to play it more.
All right.
So now you've called me out as a jackass. I'm going to sit here and
hey, man,
drink some vodka while you read the next one.
That's what this is all about. This isn't Kumbaya podcast, Brett.
Just shut the fuck up and read.
All right, are you want to read this or do you want me to read it?
You're reading. I'm sulky and drinking now.
All right. George Sedgwick emails us. Subject line, you bullies. Sean and Brett, please stop picking on Fytor. I know he's an easy target, but really, in this day and age, you should be more open-minded about whom you single out as an example. What about Druid? He could use a bath. Or the unfortunately named Barbara Arian. My dudes, let's get a new punching bag. Okay, all right.
Fair enough. Wizard.
Yeah. Foolishness aside, I have something I'd like to hear you talk about someday, and that topic is the precise moment of PC death. I don't mean PC death in general. You've spoken about that before, as have many others. Instead, I mean the actual moment in the game when Druid drops below 0 hit points and fails whatever save your life roll is possible. What happens at your table right at that moment? Most of the players end up shitting their pants.
Well, yeah.
Well, not necessarily. They just kind of look at each other, and one of them might mope a little. Do you let the players narrate his or her character's last gasp? Do you take the character sheet away and rip it up with gusto? Oh, yeah.
Oh, or back in the day, yeah.
Yeah. What is it? You know what is it? Like Pemberfoot did that. He's like, you know what RIP stands for? Grabs the character sheet and rips it in half.
Did you have, quick aside, have you ever torn apart a player's character sheet in front of them?
I don't think I've ever done that.
Oh, I did.
You have?
Back in high school days.
Shocker.
Back in high school days, we were like, character's dead. No. Crumple. Drop it like confetti. Dead.
Write in if you're surprised at that response, ladies and gentlemen.
That was a long time ago.
If we're taking a poll. All right. Or do you let the sheet disappear into the player's dog-eared Trapper Keeper? Hey, I've got a Trapper Keeper, and I think I've got some old dead characters in there.
Probably.
I haven't had one of these death scenes for a long while, even though I run gritty games, so I'm thinking about how to handle the next one, which might be coming up soon. Also, though I have written this to Brett before, perhaps on Facebook, you say so many things that make it sound like you'd love playing The One Ring if you gave it a try. The lore is great, and like MERP, source books uncover great secrets. Furthermore, there are excellent rules for travel and downtime, both of which are integral to the world and the game, just like in the novels. Combat is pretty gritty as well, 2 rounds and you're out. I know you can't make your group play it, but whatever, just make them play it, or something. Guys, your podcast is excellent. Thank you so much for all you do. George.
You know, George, I had at one time a copy of The One Ring and a couple of supplemental books that went with it. I started reading through it, and I went, interesting. And then I went through a purge where I went through a lot of games I hadn't run, and I didn't think I could get to run or whatever. And I looked at it and went, oh, geez, if I'm going to run Middle-earth again, I'm going to run MERP. I'm not going to run The One Ring. And I knew a guy who was like, oh, I'll take that off your hands for X amount. I'm like, done. Made a little bit on it, and I sold it. That said, the game's still out there. It's still obtainable, so I may go back out based on what you're saying here, George, and see if I can't find me a copy of the core rules and give her a read. Why not? If nothing else, the source books, that could be pretty cool. Just for that. Cool.
Just for that.
Got anything else, Sean? One of the other horrible Brett insights you want to... Now guys like Ray Otis and Chris are going to hate me when they see me because Ray's like a big Dungeon World guy. He's going to punch me.
Dude, there are plenty of people that have opinions of games. There's nobody out there that loves every single game they ever play.
So it's okay if I don't agree with everyone?
It is okay, saying? Brett.
Awesome.
You and this platform, you can spew how much you hate all the games that you hate.
Well, that's a little harsh. But I just like the fact that people can have opinions that are wrong because that's going to come in handy for the main topic.
That's right. Shall we get to that then? Nice segue, Brad.
Hey, I try.
Holy shit, man.
I'm on my A game.
Here we go. Let's do this thing. All right, Brett. What are we talking about tonight?
Well, we've been trying to talk about high magic, low magic. You and I have dished about this back and forth. And we got into a little bit more when we started talking about Eberron. And in the spirit of 2 guys who are probably really wrong and they're ready to announce it to the world, I thought we'd bring Wayne and Christian on and see what they had to say.
Oh, my God.
You're killing
Great
me.
intro. Thanks, Brad.
Killing me, Smalls.
Wayne and Christian from Manifest Zone pays the BS show a visit.
Well, we have to educate Brett, so...
Well, somebody's got to. Well, Christian's been here before, so he was fully prepared for the level of ass hattery that was in store for him. Wayne, I've met at QCC, so he had a pretty good idea what level of ass hattery was in store for him. So anyway, what the genesis of this was, as I said, was we were talking about the new Eberron release on DM's Guild. Sean's a big Eberron fan, and I've been poking him periodically, and he keeps telling me it's not high magic. And when I hear things like lightning rails and what I view as magical automatons that are PCs and ever-burning torches, I'm like, dude, that's high magic, high magic. And Christian and Wayne both kind of justly tried to smack me down a little bit on the G Plus and said, hey, man, whoa. Let's talk a little bit here about this. So we're on to talk about it.
Well, and I should say that I try to talk to Brett every week. I try to convince him. I sometimes agree with him. Sometimes I don't agree. And I was just really tired at that point. And I thought, well, let's just get 2 other guys on here to just tackle it.
Or tackle me. It's one or the other.
So basically, you're calling in the reinforcements is what you're doing. Right.
So Sean's going to sit on me while you guys lecture.
Right. It's like when you get that bully picking on you. You're like, I'm going to get my older brother to come in and or something to that effect.
I don't need to take this shit. I got 2 other guys that'll back me up on this.
So before we start, Sean, did you burn your Eberron books for magical tattoos?
Oh, God. Yeah, I knew Christian was going to bust my chops.
I'm just saying. I just want to start with that. All right. And, no, but also, thanks for having me back on, man. Yeah, it was, what was that, episode 80? Was it that long ago?
Yeah, it was a long time back, dude.
Man, Savage Worlds, yeah, with Ron. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. So thanks for having me on again. And yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is my first time on the show, and I think anybody who's actually heard me on the mics from other shows, I blame Sean and Brett specifically for getting me on the air. So it is completely their fault. If you guys hate me, it's totally their fault.
Damn
it's
it,
totally
dude.
giving it NBS.
You can't win, man. You can't win.
Can't win.
So, all right. So before we go too far, I mean, Manifest
Yeah.
Zone. What's that? That's your podcast you guys are doing. What's that all about? Let's get that out there right now.
Yeah, so that it was kind of funny, and well, part of the humor is that Sean was actually part of this conversation, where I was literally having 3 different conversations with 3 different people about doing an Eberron podcast. Sean was one of those, and due to scheduling things, Sean wasn't able to participate, which I'm really still sad about, Sean. But and the whole thing came about because we were like, man, the other person was Scott W. Wayne, of course.
They ditched me. They ditched me for the big guy.
Yeah, so we got Keith Baker, which was
it was either Sean Kelly or the designer and developer and originator and the man behind the mask.
To be fair, is when Sean said, "Hey, I don't think I'm going to be able to, make it work schedule wise," and I said, "You know what? I've corresponded with Keith in the past, and let me just, on a whim, let me just see if he's interested." And sure enough, he was like, "Yeah, I'm interested. I love talking about Eberron." So, and then the scheduling worked out well because he's like, "I can only do it once a month." I'm like, "That's okay. I can only do it once a month too." So, worked out really well, and it's been amazing. Quite honestly, I remember.
It's one of those band like the behind the music kind of stories.
Yeah.
Like Sean Kelly, 5th Beatle, didn't make it, left an opening for Keith Baker to join Manifest Zone.
Right.
I mean,
So Wayne, if I heard correctly, though, you were never about Sean getting on the show. You were kind of pushing Sean off. Is that true?
Truth be told, we all were.
I mean, when Christian was like, you know what, should we invite Sean or Keith Baker, and Scott and I looked at each other and went,
Fuck that guy.
it's a really, really tough decision.
I love you, Wayne.
Yeah, really, really, really tough decision. I mean, but then Christian was like, Sean's schedule just does not match up. He wants to do a weekly podcast. We're like, oh man, that just doesn't work for us. And we had to go with Keith. Just it was a purely a schedule thing.
Yeah, Wayne fought. Really. He fought for you, man.
Yeah, I fought really hard. It was just like, it's Sean. I mean, we need the guy that says, it depends. Every third sentence, you need that guy on the show. Right?
That's right.
Hey, I bought your latest product, Wayne. It's already done, buddy.
Nice.
Oh, okay. Well,
all right. So,
checks in the mail.
So the reason why we thought of it, by the way, was that there were a lot of people who were trying to make Eberron work in 5e, and what we were seeing around was one, there was a gap. There's a lack of information about Eberron, but 2, also that people we saw, in our opinions, of course, we're humble people, but in our opinions, we felt like people just kind of weren't really getting Eberron. To some extent, and so just the way they interpret things, like if I see Warforged being presented as like programmed robots with gears and stuff, I'm gonna flip a table, man. That's like one of my big pet peeves. But also the idea that it's like steampunk or magic punk or something to that effect. It's like, stop putting punk in everything, please, dear God. It's not anything punk. It's just D&D. In a logical, taken to a logical sort of place, I guess.
Well, I'll tell you what then. So I said, Sean and I got our little very brief back and forth. I said, it's high magic, says Brad. No, says Sean. Fuck you, blah, blah, blah. We said, whatever, done. What piece of that, and Christian, we'll start with you, but what was your gut reaction to when I or anybody says, it's high magic, obviously, because of Lightning Rails, Warforged, blah, blah, blah. What is your gut reaction when someone says Eberron is a high magic setting?
It's that there's a concept that people grab onto when they hear high magic, and it's that it's just super powerful magic. And that's what Eberron is not. It's actually ubiquitous low-level magic. So it's wide magic, and Keith will actually use that exact phrase, wide magic, which means that nothing really above 3rd level or so is common. It's all really low-level stuff. And all it is presuming that given the mechanics of D&D, you have magic that is repeatable, observable, you can communicate it, you can teach it, you can learn it. It's science, and it's where where a setting like D&D, or not like D&D, but assuming D&D rules, a setting would evolve to in terms of let's just use this to make our lives convenient. And that's
if I can make an ever burning torch, why would we not sell those, right? Why would I not make that and just have it something everybody has?
Exactly. So this isn't anything different than what D&D already presents. It's just taking it to a logical place. Like, what would you. So some people will even say, oh, has anybody done like gunpowder or firearms in Eberron? And Keith and a lot of others will say, well, why would you even bother? Like, why would you use a crude instrument like that when you can just use a wand, especially now in 5e where a wand is just a focus item for any spell you're casting?
Okay.
And and that's really what it boils down to. So I think, in my opinion, I think what the discrepancy is when people say high magic, it's like relative to what? But also, are we talking about ubiquity, or are we talking about power level?
There's the other thing that you said there is wide, the ubiquity component of it. I think that's really interesting because I think in what you just described there, I think that's where my head goes when I hear ubiquity. I think obviously it's high magic because if magic is everywhere, it's high magic. However, you're saying that it's power level as well as ubiquity. So Wayne, do you agree with that? Is that your perspective as well, or do you have anything else to add in there?
That's pretty much it. I mean, that's something that Christian and I, when we first had chatted about it, it was something that we really did agree on. And it's something that I think that people don't really realize is that it's like you said, it's magic taken to the next logical conclusion. It's magic as a type of technology, as a type of power source to create certain effects. I mean, we, if you think about history, we created steam power, figured out how to figure out steam, and we made a train. We figured out electricity, and we managed to figure out a telephone. We managed to figure out flight from enough power and the combustion engine and all that stuff. Now imagine that all those power sources, all the things that are doing that, are done through a type of science. Now, you remember, the science so advanced that you can't tell the difference between magic. If you think of it as an extension of that, you've created this black box that's powered by magic, and this black box can do certain things. It can power a train. And a train is not, to us, I mean, even if you went back a little bit, people might think, oh my gosh, this is a huge invention. And in that perception, it might seem like it's magical. But to the people of Eberron, to the people of Corvair, a lightning rail is just, it's their technology. It's their, modern conveyance, that kind of thing. So like when we talk about ubiquity, it's, yes, everybody knows, it's a stage where everybody knows what a train is. Everybody knows what a telephone is. Everybody knows, what a wand or the personal protection conveyance is, but they don't just see it as a steam train or a coal train. They don't see it as electricity powered, telephone or telegram line, and they don't see it as a gun. But it's that sort of power scale level, and that's very, very wide. But the person who can basically bring down a meteor from the sky, that basically doesn't exist except for in the player characters.
Okay,
right.
Sean, you buying this? It's working on me. It's working on me. I want to know if you're in.
Well,
I'm also trying to find out if you actually know Eberron, because I want to know right now. I'm trying to figure out if you're a poser through part of this
I'm totally
question.
a poser, man. That's why I wanted to join their podcast, man, so I could learn about it even more than I know.
Get some Eberron cred finally.
So Brett, you don't know. I mean, you don't know anything about Eberron? Where have you read anything like?
No.
Okay, so you're like completely ignorant to it.
I wouldn't. So completely is too strong. So when I see things like lightning rail, the ubiquity of the magic items, and especially, quite frankly, the Warforged, like, threw me off, because I'm like, if you have magical large fucking construct golems that are PCs, clearly high magic is there. And I think where I'm going is not only the ubiquity, but my assumption, it sounds like I'm wrong here, is the assumption is that the power level has to be way the hell up there, i.e. something higher than third level. I mean, if we're making sentient golems, right, as player characters, we have to have a high power level. High power level, of course, I'm thinking Forgotten Realms or greater. And it sounds like from what you guys are laying on me now, that is not true. So I think not only just from the ignorance of Eberron, but I love the way that this is making me rethink high versus low, because the concept of the ubiquity of what power level, right? So even because if I crack in my Avalon world and I say, well, there's ubiquity of magic there, it's really small. It's like instead of third level and up, this is like second level and under type of thing. That's more common. You have potions that kind of half-ass work type of thing. But you have alchemists on the street corners that sell you things. They're effectively, very nerfed magic. But it's there. And I wouldn't say that's high. That wouldn't say that's a high magic setting, because while it may be ubiquitous, the power level is really low. So I like where this is going. So this makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I should clarify two things. Like, first of all, the living construct concept. Yes, they exist, and yes, that's pretty powerful magic. But truth be told, House Cannith doesn't actually fully understand how they even made them living constructs.
Ah, okay. So it's kind of one of the mysteries of the science.
Yeah, basically what, if you think about like weird science in a pulp sort of setting, right, where you just kind of like find something and you kind of like mash parts together and you're like, oh, cool, something came out of this. That's kind of what House Cannith did with stuff that they discovered down in Zendrick. And so they find like some of these like ancient relics or creation forges in Zendrick that was that were created by the giants or possibly by the quarry, for example. They borrow some of that technology, they bring it over, and basically it was one particular member of House Cannith, Eberron de Cannith, who was able to take the Warforged concept that his father made and grant it sentience through some of the stuff that he found, right? Whatever it was. But they never really understood what made them living exactly. It just worked, and then they just duplicated it. So I think that's one important thing. This isn't like anybody also can go and just create a living construct, right? This is very specific technology that can only be used by somebody with the mark of making. And again, they don't even fully quite understand how it works. The other thing is when you look at airships are actually they're an invention that came out of the last war, and they came out really closer toward the end of the last war, and there's not that many of them. And still to this date, at the start of the campaign date, basically when somebody looks up and they see an airship, that's like, wow, there's an airship. It's a big deal.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. So it's not ubiquitous, right? That's some potent shit, and there it is. Oh my God, come take a look, kids.
It's known, but it's not necessarily like, there's like a fleet of airships flying around all over the place. Like people don't have like a navy of airships, for their nation, for example. So, but it is known, and it's when you look up in this city, let's say if you're in Sharn City of Towers and you look up and you see an airship flying overhead, you're like, wow, hey, look at that airship. It's still a wonder.
So with the Warforged being kind of that crazy ass wonder of magic that happens to be a player character race, how many of them are there across the land? I mean, are they common, or when you see one, are there like five? Are there 5 of them, 1,000 of them, millions of them?
There's a lot of them. I don't know what the numbers are, and they were produced in mass throughout the last war. Now they've only been produced since 33 years ago at the start of the campaign. Okay. So the oldest one you're going to have is only 33. If it's still alive, and there are a lot of them. And they're distributed. You got to remember that these were like almost whole units that they would produce and sell to a nation.
Like tanks, basically, right?
Yeah, or just like foot soldiers, or soldiers that they put on the front lines. Yeah, and but the other thing to keep in mind is that when the Treaty of Thronehold was signed, one of the stipulations was that House Cannith had to shut down all their creation forges, and no more Warforged could be produced. So as a Warforged, as a player character, we actually have an episode about this. By the way, Brett, if you want to learn about Eberron, there's this amazing podcast called
I heard about it. Yeah. No, this is my itty bitty primer to see if it's. This is cool though. I didn't. So the other thing that Sean has thrown at me is he said it's kind of. I think you said, Sean, it's kind of noir. At least as a way you've explained it to me before. And again, when I see it. And I see that stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I can't grok that and put the two together. However, bizarrely enough, I love Samurai Jack. So I'm watching the Samurai Jack cartoon, and there's an episode where there is this, it's a very noir episode where there's this assassin robot who dresses a three-piece suit and so forth. He's got this little pug dog named Lulu. And the bad guy, Aku, kidnaps his dog, Lulu. He has to try to go kill Jack. It's a very noir, crazy-ass thing. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. It totally fits. It feels very noir and gritty and everything. But I'm like, that's a robot doing this thing. And so I'm trying to take that piece and slide, I guess, my understanding that I was able to wrap my brain around that and move it over here. So Wayne, I'm going to throw this one at you. When you think about the setting, so when I think lower magic, the ubiquity and the lower power level, and I start thinking of the types of adventures and such, I do tend to think of that noir, kind of that gritty street level stuff, because if you're not chucking fireballs and lightning bolts and summoning demons and fucking wish spells and stuff, you're just to compare, it's not a Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk type of thing. What kind of, when you are thinking low-level magic or this ubiquity and so on, what types of stories and adventures are you thinking of in that space?
I think one of the things, just to set a scale from comparison, I think everybody can agree that Forgotten Realms is high magic. It's quite ubiquitous anyways, but it's pretty high. You've got the big people in the realms are wizards. One of the things that Keith said, and I actually never thought about it this way, but now it makes sense, is that in Eberron, it is not a balanced world. It is a world where evil has the upper hand, and you need the characters to even out the score because they're the good guys, right? That kind of makes it part of the noir thing. When you think about a noir adventure, just in general, because I think Christian and I agree on this one, is that people sometimes run Eberron just out of the box D&D, and while you can do that, I think it leaves a little bit out of what Eberron can really be. And we talk about the first part is the noir part, where the intrigue, the mystery, the investigation, the dark betrayal, the dark aspects of it. You need to have that in there, because otherwise you're not really you're just running kind of standard fantasy at that point. And specifically for Eberron is stuff that, at least when I look at it and when I'm running stuff, I'm trying to look at stuff that you can't just solve with your powers. You can't just solve with your I'm gonna cast wish, and you can't solve the problem that way. Like, that's not the point. The whole point is to get into it, elbows deep into the mystery, into the adventure, the module, whatever you're running, and experience the mystery and intrigue and the frustration and the betrayal and the hurt and the deep kind of characters, the multifaceted characters in that. That's the one part of Eberron I think that people may shy away from because they may not be used to doing that. I'm not saying that you have to, but you may not be used to doing that. And when it comes to magic, when you're trying to design something, you kind of want to try to design something, at least in that section, that magic is not just going to solve, like that. You can't just be like, well, we got to find this object. Well, I cast locate object and it's here. Well, you kind of want to get around that. You don't want to invalidate someone's character abilities, but you don't want to just give it to them and be like, yeah, you can find it. Be like, oh, wait, it's right here, sort of thing. And it's also the references and the things that inspire you about it. In terms of that dark, gritty noir feel, look at some of the noir settings and things around. Look at the things that, Strangers on a Train, anything Alfred Hitchcock, sort of those kind of like dark things, any of those kind of movies, for that side, and you can kind of get an idea. Even Blade Runner. I think Blade Runner is actually a really amazing example of this as well.
One of the things you said, I'm going to jump in on you for a sec.
Yeah.
One of the things you said at the beginning that's just resonating in my head is, it's an unbalanced world. When I hear unbalanced, my first thought is, that means there's, a PC monster balance, right? Because I'm in that D&D zone. But when you take it to what you said, is that, I think you're kind of quoting our founder here on this one, is saying, hey, evil has the upper hand. And that is, to me, a very that's one way to make it so that, the ubiquity, the power levels tend to be down. You don't have, the bad guy may have the extra MacGuffin. He may be able to hide the thing so your locate object won't work because he's the bad guy. He has the thing or she's got that thing because they're evil. They're bad. That's why they can do it. I do try to do a similar thing in Avalon where it feels like the betrayals and if you're trying to do good, you're striving to do good in a setting in a world around you that has either given up or like, look, you can try, man, but good luck making any real difference because it just doesn't. That type of feeling where evil has the upper hand. And that's interesting when you think about kind of a low magic setting with a ubiquitous level of magic of some sort, because we're talking fantasy here, but you've dropped the power level. Oh, and on top of that, the bad guys have the upper hand. Because that's where the scales have tipped on you. I like that idea.
Yeah, and I think it's worth clarifying too that I think what Wayne means, and Wayne, feel free to jump in on this, but I think what Wayne means by evil has the upper hand is that there are really great, powerful evils lurking sort of in the shadows. In the showers.
That's a different problem.
Creepy.
I don't want to play with you guys anymore.
They're lurking in the shadows. There's these overlords that are trapped under Kyber or in Kyber. There's the
it can't be like obvious like, well, it's the dragon that lives right there and shows up every Wednesday. It has to be almost a hidden evil.
And there are like not so hidden evils that exist, but they're not that powerful. Like the Lord of Blades, you could kill him if if you do it right. But the other interesting thing about Eberron, if you read the original Eberron campaign setting, and I can't recall if the 4E book does this as well, as the PCs level up, so too should the bad guys. That they're doing things that are giving them experience, that are increasing their power level, and so on. So it shouldn't be
So the world continues to grow with you, right? Just because you went up 5 levels, hey, guess what?
So did the Lord of Blades.
Exactly.
Right.
Lord of Blades and Mistress of Death. Yes, they're both right there.
Right.
So wow.
Exactly. And so, and the reason for that is so that it's not like, ding, I'm 12th level, I can go kill off a bunch of bad guys. It's like it's a setting that's living and breathing as well.
This reminds me of, oddly enough, of Delta Green. One of the first. I've not read the new stuff, but one of the first, the first series of books that I have on Delta Green, the core and so on. The Karatechia is the basically the throwaway bad guys. They're the Nazis that did the whole, oh my God, we're gonna raise Cthulhu and do craziness and whatnot.
It's Emerald Claw and Eberron, yeah.
Yeah, they're the guys you can just fucking mow down.
Right. You can punch them in the face and not feel guilty.
Yeah, because you're like they're Cthulhu Nazis. How evil can you get? Fucking kill them, right? But the real stuff, actually, they're like the creature you see up front. You fought it. You shot the Nazi bastard. You stopped him from raising Yog-Sothoth. But hey, guess what? That was actually the Karatechia agent you found. They're actually a pawn of a Nyarlathotep cult.
Right.
Oh my God,
right.
The deeper evil beneath it. So you've got, as you said, you've got the lesser things you can go out and win, and you feel like you've got this kick-ass win, but behind the scenes, you've got the other piece of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I've actually run campaigns like that where it's like it's layer after layer working their way up. And then, the players sort of, getting these reveals of like, holy crap, this is bigger than we thought, Yeah.
It's funny that Brett mentions Cthulhu because that's not specifically that, but if you think about the amount of power that some Cthulhian-esque creature has, and you're the guy there that's a detective with a gun. Everybody's got a gun.
Or a book,
or
a book and a black candle. That's all I've got.
Yeah, basically, or you have a knife. And that's really where the characters start. Yes, you have access to a gun, but your enemies have access to all these other things because they are more powerful than you. And sometimes it is just, you need to feel that kind of edge. Like, we're talking about the dark side of Eberron here. The second thing, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. The second thing is, actually, I think it was you guys and Chris Sneezak actually turned me onto reading Night's Black Agents. And the Conspiramid idea.
Yeah, the Conspiramid. Yep, that's really cool.
The Conspiramid idea is basically what you guys are talking about, and that's the way you kind of want to reveal this mystery, is that you got these levels, and you have these responses and whatnot. I actually took a page after listening to you guys when you talked about Gumshoe and how to run investigations. I took that into consideration when I run more recently when I run or I talk about Eberron, is that if you're running stuff in D&D, there's a slight limitation. But if you take some of these ideas to apply how it works in D&D and how it works in Eberron, it actually works quite well. You need to do a little bit of research. We're not talking about the kick in the door or swashbuckling action side. We're talking about the multi-layered, your enemy is much more powerful than you, and they're moving behind the scenes, and you're stumbling along trying to figure out, how do I get to it? And sometimes they might have allies, it might be enemies. You've got those shades of gray in there. Eberron, if it was a film, it should be filmed in black and white, pretty much, and then those splotches of color. Think like Sin City sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's really like, if you were to turn it into a movie, you turn a campaign into a movie, it would be filmed in black and white. Basically.
So when you mention the swashbuckling, some of that stuff. Now, when I think swashbuckling, you think like no magic. At least I tend to. But daring do and craziness and high kind of high adventure and so forth. I often feel that in a low magic game, and it feels like this would be this. And we're using Eberron obviously as kind of our touch point here, but it feels like that type of thing to me, even with the ubiquity of a lower power, the scale of the magic is down. Those type of adventures are still readily available too. Like if you want to be a pirate and you want to have that classic piratey type stuff, you could totally get away with that with this type of setting, where even if there is some magic and there's lightning rail and sure there's a Warforged, but now you could have that Warforged pirate, and that's totally cool because it fits, because you don't have crazy ass power levels everywhere. You can still go total swashbuckler.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you touched on that, because I was going to mention, Wayne did talk about the dark side, but there's also that swashbuckling, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Pirates of the Caribbean style as well that you can do in Eberron. And really, when you think about things like the lightning rail, the airships and such, that technology, when you have an adventure that features one of those things, it's not about the technology. It's about getting you to the destination where you can have that adventure.
Yeah, it's like the Indiana Jones Last Crusade, right? You get on the Zeppelin and
red line across the map, right?
Exactly.
And then
exactly.
the action takes place at the location. That's what's important. That's not to say that you can't have, like high adventure on an airship or on a lightning rail. In fact, some campaigns, some adventures that have been published specifically even feature that. But that it's really just a way to if anything, I actually really appreciated it coming from Greyhawk. I was a huge Greyhawk fan, because I would look at this massive map of Greyhawk. I had the 4-panel Paizo map, and I would look at it, I'm like, I can't explore all this in the campaign. Like it's
I can't possibly get from point A to point B unless I get a Griffin or something. There's no way.
Right.
And even then, no way.
Right. So what the airship allows me to do, in my adventure, is I can hit all of these points. I can go all over the world, in theory, and have all these really diverse experiences as part of this sort of high action swashbuckling adventure. And I think, that's high magic, but what happens once you're back on the ground, it's still just D&D, in many ways.
Okay, Sean, you still with us? You good?
Yeah, man.
So Sean, I'm going to ask you one here. When you are thinking about Eberron adventuring and so forth, magic items, characters, gear, what do you think of as, when I think about a Forgotten Realms character, I'll pick on the Realms, or even my old Greyhawk characters, it was not unheard of for me to have, 2-3 magic rings, a +1 dagger, a +2-3 sword. You're at a certain point, you're geared up. I mean, you're literally geared up with magic. And it sounds like in your Eberron campaign, that's not going to happen. Is there, my assumption is with ubiquity and the power level, magical gear, like a wand is, how do I say this? Permanent magical gear, armor, swords, things that don't get used up. Is that stuff common, or is that less? What do you think, Sean?
Well, certainly. So one thing we haven't mentioned is that different people's Eberron's campaigns are going to be different, and that's okay. Like they can amp up the magic if they want to, right? Because one thing, even the guys talk about this on Manifest Zone, and Keith does too. A lot of people will ask about, well, what's this about, or what's that about, or hey, can I do this, or hey, can I do that? And the setting and all the components that are in it like any D&D setting, can always be changed by the game master and the players. Like make it your own. So having said that, my take on that is I would not probably flood the campaign with a huge amount of magic items unless they're more practical, right? So healing potions may be more practical, some of those things. But when you start getting into, +2 weapons or, rod of 7 parts, those are really rare. And that kind of goes along with the theme of what we've been talking about tonight, where the common magic is common because of the way the world is. But when you start getting into higher magic items, it's the same thing as the magic power of the campaign setting. Now, somebody else could be out there and say they're gonna amp it up, and that's totally cool. So I think I would use it in a more moderate approach.
So even if we took the Eberron piece of it out, in a low magic setting, with this type of ubiquity, with a low level power, you would moderate or kind of lessen the gear, right? A +1 breastplate's going to be pretty fucking cool. Not that common. A +2 sword, not going to have a lot of those laying around, is what I'm hearing you say.
Right. Unless of course I was running an adventure where some of those things may be necessary in order to achieve what's needed. So maybe they're up against
but the impact of finding such a thing is this is one of the beautiful things to me about a low magic environment. I mean, we're running, and the three of us are playing, and Sean's like, "All right, you find this thing." We identify. We're like, "Oh my god, it's a +2 sword." I'm assuming Wayne and Christian look at each other like, what? Where's this from? How did we find? Oh my god, what's the story behind this thing? My assumption is that it's a big damn deal. Christian, am I right there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things that we have to consider too, and it's addition of D&D, or even just what system you're using if it's not D&D.
I was going to bug you about that because I know you also did a Savage Worlds retcon for this thing too.
So like in 3.5 or 3rd edition in general, magic items were really important. You had to have magic items in order to get past like damage reduction, for example.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, in 3.035 Pathfinder, no gear, you fucked.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's just how it happens.
Now, I think...
Same in 4th.
Yeah, same in 4th, right. So I think, and Wayne, you might know more, you might be able to speak more to this than I think in 5th edition, they've mitigated that somewhat. Mm-hmm. And I would say, like, having run it in Savage Worlds, magic items are not that important. You don't need that much, in terms of magic items. So in my Eberron in Savage Worlds, people are not walking around with, +1 fighting, +1 damage, longswords. And if you do have one, it's a big deal. That +1 goes a lot farther than in, like, say, in D&D, for example.
Mm-hmm. Wayne, if I'm right, I think I'd agree with you. In 5e, I know Sean's running it right now, and I'm playing plenty of it. So I would agree with that with Christian's statement that we don't have as much reliance on gear. Gear is really wicked cool, but the way the classes are built right now, I really don't need the gear as much.
Yeah, so specifically let's talk about 5e for a sec. I mean, D&D in general, 5th edition, magic items are not required. You don't have to give them out. They are a complete bonus. Your character classes and whatnot are built on the fact that you don't necessarily need them. Like, they're not required to play the game.
Correct.
Now, that said, it means people might have to play the game a little differently. Like, if you have a game that has basically no magic items, there might be some different things. I mean, having a fighter or something like that doesn't have a magic weapon, damage reduction or damage immunity might come into this thing, and you're looking at different things here. But in specifically talking about Eberron, and I'm gonna step away from 3 and 4th because they had a system. So in 3rd edition and 4th edition, they had a system whereas you would purchase, or you'd be able to purchase magic items because they had a cost. You knew how much it cost, and you knew how to upgrade or purchase one if you get the chance to. In 5th edition, until more recently, there was no cost for magic items. There was a rarity. It was a common, uncommon, rare, very rare, or legendary item, and that was it. Like those are your rarities, but it wouldn't give you a cost. It would give you something approximate. You can kind of take a guess at it. I think with Eberron, what it would introduce, and the way that I have looked at it is that you can now sort of cost out some of the earlier items. A common or an uncommon item, and maybe even a rare item, might have almost a standardized cost because they would have the ability to make them more efficiently or make them more available. So now you could maybe get a common item. Other than a potion of healing, you could get maybe a common item, or even an uncommon item. If you kind of stretched it, you'd be able to find those. You'd be able to purchase those with gold or with favors or whatnot. But the stuff at higher levels would start sort of disappearing because there was no call for making magic items that powerful, because you could not, you couldn't arm everybody with a +1 sword. You couldn't arm your whole thing, but maybe you could arm all your commanders with something a little more powerful. The stuff that was more powerful than that was not cost effective maybe for House Cannith to create. So nobody was going to be like, I want a +3 sword or I want a Vorpal blade. Well, no one's going to make that for you because you're one person and a fireball is going to drop your second level ass, sort of thing, right?
Fair enough.
And something from 3rd edition and 4th edition that people know is that the non-player characters, the NPCs, are not the same as PCs. They're not like, except for your villains and the people are supposed to level up with you. The prince is still a noble, 3 hit dice, 4 hit dice. When you're 15th level, he's still a 3 hit dice noble. His power comes from politics. He didn't go out adventuring with the rest of you guys. And same with magic items. You may go find a crypt and you might find something. You might find a long lost sword and it might be powerful, but no one else is kind of creating those. And that's one of those things that, everybody might have a gun. That means everybody might have a common wand, or everybody might have, those wand slingers might be able to have like that kind of special wand, maybe costing, a few paychecks to do. Not all of them, or not very few of them, are going to have a Wand of the War Mage +2 or +3. Those things are impossibly rare, even though it says, quote unquote, very rare. Those things are extremely rare because no one's making those.
Well, yeah.
And there's no...
And to be fair,
there's
like,
nothing there.
Like a wand is just an arcane focus in 5e.
Yeah.
That's it. Like,
True.
It's nothing...
Well, I mean, there's magic wands, too, you can find. There's gear.
Oh, yeah.
Wand of Wonders and all that crap.
Yeah. But in the sense, like Keith Baker wrote about wand slingers in Wayfinder's Guide, and all he's saying is, like, anybody could be a wand slinger.
Oh, got it. Okay. So, Christian, when you're running Eberron right now, so... I'm gonna table that one. I'm gonna ask this other question instead. So it sounds to me, in a low magic setting, even like one of the things that I do in Avalon or whatever is you'll find a magic item and it's pretty freaking potent. It's at that level of where the normal ubiquity power level is X and this is X times 4 or X plus 5 or something crazy. Like fuck me. It's like a focal point of the thing, the story, the adventure, that component. It's a big damn deal. It's the Maltese Falcon, if you will. So it feels like that's the same type of thing we're talking about here, right? When you have one of the draws to a low magic environment is when you find something that's got oomph to it. Well, what I think we're saying here, if I boil it down, is that oomph makes it really fucking cool, and it's usually named. It's important, right. And there's a reason for it to be here. It's not just laying around.
Right. And in fact, like in Savage Worlds, for example, that's actually Clint Black, who's the Core Rules brand manager for Savage Worlds. He'll, if you point at something in the Fantasy Companion where they have like all these magic items, he's like, if you have a magic item, it better be a named thing. Because in Savage Worlds, magic is, again, it's very powerful for what it grants. And, it shouldn't just be a +1 sword. It should be like, the sword of blah, 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 whatever it might be, some legendary thing. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch on, though, is like, I wanted to ask you, Brett. I'm going to ask you for a question, actually.
Damn it!
When you looked at 3rd edition D&D, did you see that as high magic? Like, just the base core rules?
The base core rules?
Yeah. Were you like, oh, this is high magic? Or...
I didn't see high magic. I saw it as, oh my god, this is crazy overpowered. Because feats, fucking what? I mean,
that's like character abilities, but I mean like as far as like the magic spells and the presence of magic items or the presence of magic in the D&D assumed world.
No, it didn't really bother me. Honestly, it wasn't until 5th edition they started to tear into that, because when I run the game the way I'm going to run the game. When I run D&D, I run D&D the way I do. And if I want to give out magic items, I give them out or whatever. And if you have a monster you can't defeat because you don't have the +1 sword and the weapon, the damage reduction's too great, you better fucking run away. Yeah. Totally. So the way I run it, this is where I know people give me shit for this, is I basically game master over certain things. Like, look, this is the setting, this is the way it works. Go for it. And I've not run a setting that's had a high magic feel to it. I've not run a Forgotten Realms setting in a very, very long time, or anything like that. I've even when I ran Greyhawk in 3rd edition, it didn't feel crazy powerful to me, because it was the guys were cleaning out the Grand Duchy of Jeff after the Giants took over, so it was just a different type of feel.
Okay, so here's something that's interesting. I don't know if you're aware of this, or maybe you are. Eberron was developed and designed assuming 3E mechanics were in the world.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, the original, the way lycanthropes were represented in terms of like the lycanthropic purge and stuff, that was based on how lycanthropy spread in third edition rules 3.0, which changed in 3.5, so they had to kind of figure a way out of that. Because they were developing Eberron while 3.5 was coming out. But a lot of the things in Eberron are all assuming the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition exist in the world, hence the repeatable, observable, etc. regarding magic.
Makes sense.
And in fact, one of the things that Eberron actually did is that they actually sort of suppressed the magic level again by saying there's really nothing above this level. Like, there's no like high-powered NPCs out there. The heroes, the PCs, are the heroes of the world. They're the ones that should be the powerful ones in the world. So
interesting. I like that.
Yeah. So I guess, and the point I'm trying to make is that, if you're assuming that D&D itself is not necessarily high powered, you would have to, by, I guess, what is that, associative property, presume that Eberron is not necessarily high powered magic.
Well, that's a good point, because I mean, if it's based, that's interesting. This is where, if you choose a rule set that to fit your setting, which is what most of us try to do, like, hey, I want to run this setting, I'm trying to find a rule set either of my own design or variation, blah blah blah, that fits it, that makes it really work. I think that's one of the reasons why when things translate from 3 to 4 and 4 to 5, people want to make sure they keep the flavor and don't lose it because when the core rule like D&D changes how whether magic items are assumed that you have X number of them, or assume that you don't have any of them, or hey, you don't even need those damn things, or whatever it is. That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that, especially for a setting like Eberron, an official one.
Yeah, and it can be challenging, because as you move across editions, or even if you move to a different system, then you kind of...
Oh, you talk about edition moves, man. You look at the realms, and my favorite realms are 1st edition realms.
Yeah.
When I run 1st edition AD&D realms, I never had the feeling that I got when it got 2nd and 3rd, when I started reading 3rd stuff. Like, holy fuck, what did you guys do? It just felt like everything went... It just got bigger and bigger and crazier.
I mean, I struggled with Greyhawk because it had so much legacy stuff from older editions, in terms of like, and again, assuming mechanics from older editions, that events, occurred and took place and so on, that don't really make sense in, like, say, 3rd edition, for example. Like, and they're minor things, but you're just like, it makes it kind of tricky to reconcile.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I remember realms going from 1st to 2nd, total tangent here, folks. And then there were no half-orcs, and bards were a class, and it was just no assassins anymore. And those were core things in 1st edition that were just gone, and there was no such thing back in the day, kids, as a prestige class. It just didn't fucking exist. You had to wait for Splatbook Hell to land before you could find all that crap. Right. So just to look around the realms and go, so what happened to all the illusionists?
Right.
Because that's not really a thing anymore. Where'd they go? Where's the half orcs? They just die? What fuck? It got weird.
Yeah, it gets weird. And
excuse me.
So I guess, again, thinking about D&D, like, we're saying that it's not high magic. It's definitely not low magic per se. It can be, depending on what you do as a GM. But I think default D&D, at least for the sake of the conversation around D&D, would really be sort of middle magic, right? Like,
Yeah. You know, and what's interesting is when we talked a little bit about this off the mic, so I want to bring it in right now. So when one of the things we started talking about before this, folks, was I said, you know, you think Fafhrd the Grey Mouser, you think low magic, and Christian had said, yeah, like Conan's low magic. And then it stopped my brain for a second. I'm like, wait a minute. In Conan, the magic they're doing, they're trying to change, like, the climate. Somebody's causing a river to flood by causing it to rain in the mountains in, I think, Hour of the Dragon. And, or they're summoning demons. Like, literally demons from hell, or wizards are going into crazy-ass places and coming back with bizarre, insane powers. In the one tale, I can't remember what it is, but Conan cuts the head off a wizard, and the body gets up and just starts looking for the head.
right.
It's like he cannot die. It's fucking crazy. And then you look at even Fafhrd the Grey Mouser. There are points when Fafhrd and the Mouser go from Nuhan to Earth. They're basically in the Mediterranean area, and then where they encounter a gentleman. I think he speaks German, and he's riding on a dragon. And they literally plane hop, and there's big crazy ass magic that happens. It doesn't happen often.
Yeah, those are exceptions, right?
Yes,
this is story driven, like like amazing. You know, it's the stuff. It's why we read those books, right? It's like, wow, this amazing, powerful, magical thing just happened to them, and now they have to deal with it. This isn't something like you're walking down the street and there's like, you know, wand slingers all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, it's the ubiquity fact, right? The ubiquity meaning the fact of appearing anywhere and being very common, right? So it's not common. So you're like, motherfucker, dude just summoned a demon. And that's when Conan freaks out, which is crazy because Conan finds like guys that summon demons every 2 weeks, apparently, according to the stories.
Exactly.
He can't slay a dead cat without somebody, summoning another demon.
And most magic users are also very evil. In Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, it's a little bit different because you have the Grey Mouser himself and.
Well, even then, though, he basically kind of got black magic, killed his girlfriend's dad, and then you've got Ningobul, the Seven Eyes, and Shilba. They're not nice people. It gets creepy.
Yeah. I mean, but even look at Greyhawk, right? You had the Reign of Colorless Fire at one point, which is the epic level. Like, that's probably even beyond epic level in D&D terms.
Yeah, that was the Backlunish and the Flan, if I'm right. Or
Suluis,
Suluis. Yep.
And so
and now it's a big blasted desert beyond the
exactly.
mountains.
So you have that concept of like that level of magic exists. It's just not happening every day, But
it's in okay.
Yeah, and in Eberron we have that we had the Day of Mourning. Seer, an entire nation is now just a wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
So
is the low level aspect of it, the everything we've talked about, is that what draws? I guess the three of you, is that because that's what's drawing me to it right now. It makes me want to go grab a book and read this thing. Is that the draw for you guys because you prefer it over the higher level stuff? You're bigger, crazier. Everybody's got a +2 blade, or what? Is that the draw for you because of that, or is it just a palate cleanser? You like it as much as you like anything else?
Well, for me, what actually drew me to Eberron was the idea of Raiders of the Lost Ark meets Maltese Falcon meets Lord of the Rings. I love films like The Mummy Returns, Van Helsing, Raiders of the Lost Ark, like those high action, over the top, swashbuckling type things. And I used to actually play Greyhawk trying to do that.
Okay.
And and I always felt like it felt kind of short in some ways. And there was just something about Eberron that, you had the exotic locations, you had the ease of traveling. That was the big one. Being able to explore all these locations more easily than, say, in Greyhawk. If I start in the city of Greyhawk near the near dive, I'm like, how the hell am I going to get down to, like the jungles in the south? It's going to take trekking for months, if not years, to get there, Or take a ship. Or,
Roll for random encounter.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But as far as magic, I did also like the fact that there's not, the Elminsters, walking around the world, showing up the PCs. The PCs are the Elminsters. And that to me is a very empowering thing from a storytelling, perspective. It's you know, the PCs are the hope for the world. You know,
Very cool. Wayne, what do you think?
No, I definitely agree with that one. I think one of the first things I picked up when I saw the third edition book was that it was the characters are the heroes. You know, you kind of looked at the non-player characters. You know, they're low level. They don't have that much power. Most of the time, they're not even, you know, third edition. They're not even character classes. They're like an expert, or they're a noble, or they're, you know, an adept. Like they don't have a lot of power. That was a big thing, was that you got to be the hero. You know, when we started playing it, we didn't, you know, hopefully matured a little bit more, but we didn't play as much of the darker aspects, the dark fantasy aspects. We really loved the swashbuckling thing. I mean, you know, jumping off, you know, even almost like superhero like when you get to the higher level stuff, it's just the fun stuff that instead of looking at the best option, you just kind of do whatever's kind of interesting.
you could basically say like, I'm Batman, and it works.
Yeah, exactly. Like you literally, you do the superhero landing, you know, in Sharn, the rain's coming down, and everybody freaks out because they're about to try to mug that person, you know. The other part was the magic as technology. I thought that was incredibly different, you know. Instead of, you know, Elminster or Martikainen or Big B holding all the power in their hands and keeping magic, you know, suppressed or whatnot, someone figured out how to use magic as a power source and as a technology, and they created these things that are very fantastic, very magical. But if you think if you took the logical step of, like, you know what, we have something that has practically an unlimited power source, and you just study hard enough, you could learn it. Here's what would happen: you would create a magical sentient construct. You would create a train. You would create a telephone or a telegraph. Technically a telegraph, I guess. You would create magical light, you know, everywhere. You'd create a moving land battleship city that basically patrols the border. You know, right. Breland has like 3 or 4 of them that basically, I may be wrong about the number, so don't quote me, but, you know, you have these gigantic city things that basically roll on their wheels and float back and forth.
Is it Argonth?
There's one active and one deactivated, and I think there's a third one.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna have to look this one up.
Argonth is the active one that travels the borders of Breland.
Yeah, and I loved Warforged. I love the fact that you could have this almost a blank slate soldier, someone fully grown, but might have the ideas and personality of a child, and all they know is raise my fist, bring it down on someone's head, raise my fist, bring it down on someone's head. And I loved that. I loved the blank slate. I loved that the power, of course, that was really cool, but to be able to just step in and be like, you know what, I get to come out of that. And the last thing was the last war. The last war only ended a few years ago, and now all of a sudden you are in a post-war environment, like literally post-war environment. What does it feel like?
Yeah, it's not even peace either. It was just a treaty.
It's ceasefire environment, right? Yeah, and that's you got so much stuff to hang your hat on in Eberron. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's lots of stuff to do in all these different settings. But in Eberron, you were given, you almost given a handhold, being handheld to be like, here's the stories that are best told in Eberron. The post-war story, the coming home story, the noir, the inquisitive, the whatever, I'm going to go into the jungles and explore. I'm going to do.
We could seriously have what is it to be life, right? I mean, if you're doing Warforged, you've got the whole classic. What is it to be
absolutely,
human?
Yeah.
If you want,
and or even like if you want to do cosmic horror, that's there too. You know, if you ask a room full of Eberron fans what makes Eberron, you're going to get different answers from everybody. You're
which is cool, right? Because if it's X and that is it. It doesn't have a level of breadth and depth, right? If it's a one-trick pony, it's a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
Sean, what are you thinking, man? And what drew you to Eberron? Was it the low magic? Was that the differentiator for you? Like the low magic with with those components and the types of stories we've talked about? Is that what kind of brought you?
I think it was and I've said this before on the show, it has to do with the fantasy setting, but it has non-typical components. So some of the things that, Greyhawk has and Forgotten Realms has, there are elements of that in Eberron for sure. I mean, there's factions, there's politics, but, you want to go across the world, there's a method of transportation to do that versus travel, and travel some more, and just taking forever to get to some place, right? So I think that for me, it's more of a comprehensive overview of it. There's everything goes together and fits together. I don't just sit there and say, well, I like it because it has Warforged, or I like it because the magic is more practical and pragmatic, yet it's not overpowering the whole setting and the world. It's a combination of all that stuff.
Plus, you get halflings riding dinosaurs.
Yeah, man, halflings riding dinosaurs.
Yeah,
man.
I don't see how that's bad in any universe. Really, that's just cool.
So I
Very
think
cool.
that's most of my take on Eberron, and the noir and pulp feel of it is really something that's a little out of the usual than your typical campaign setting.
All right, so I got one more for all three of you. Sean, if you were going to run Eberron right now, what rule setting would you use? What rules would you use?
I would probably run 5e.
5e.
Yeah, I would probably run 5e, especially now that, the Wayfinder Foundation's been out there on DM's Guild, and 5e's not bad. 5e's not bad.
Wayne?
I'm a D&D guy, so 5th edition, pretty much.
You wouldn't go old school? You wouldn't go 3?
Hell no. God.
No?
I think,
Christian.
I think I've talked about this on the show where it's,
I didn't even talk to Christian. He's like, fuck that. Ugh.
5th edition. I've spoken to the designers of D&D before, and they're like, those are all step backs for them. And stepping forward, 5th edition has taken information from all these different games, anything they were able to develop. Even now, they're still developing. And I mean, if Keith is going to play it in 5th edition, I might as well follow him and play it. I mean, we did get a chance to test and read through some of his stuff. And I love 5th edition. I think it is the best of all the D&D editions, because it has the best hindsight of everything. And plus I wrote stuff in 5th edition already, so I kind of have to follow through with it.
Well, there you go. All right, Christian. So where are you at? You're gonna savage it up. You're gonna play 5e. You obviously aren't playing 3.0 because you don't have the spine for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I cut my teeth on 3.0, 3.5. I went to Savage Worlds off of 3.5 because I just got burned down on 3.5. It was just too much. It was really hard to prep sometimes. There were things about Savage Worlds that just mapped over just out of the box. Like if you want an artificer, you got arcane background, weird science already built in. Arcane background, weird science typically requires some sort of substance like Ghost Rock and Deadlands. In Eberron, you got Dragon Shards. You had action points in Eberron in 3.5. Well, now you got bennies and a wild die, and you're actually even more capable than you were in 3.5.
Gotcha.
There were it was.
So you're gonna do that though? I mean, if we're gonna play right now. You're gonna pull out the savages. You're savage it up. Or you're gonna go 5e.
So I would go Savage Worlds right now because it's what I know, it's what I'm comfortable with, and it is, in my opinion, everything. I mean, even noir. Like there's a Deadlands noir setting.
Yes,
for
there
Savage
is.
Worlds. It's like it just maps so tightly and so well. That said, I've been playing 5e also for about a year off and on. Like we're supposed to be like once a month, but sometimes it doesn't work out. So, and I've been reading and getting more into it, and having read Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, and seeing how Keith approached it. Like when I saw sub races for Dragon Marks, I was like mind blown. Like I was like, oh my god, that makes sense. And at one point we were like, for example, we were talking about half orcs with the Mark of Finding and the dark fishing component of that, where we were like, I was like, well, how do you say this about humans? They have dark vision, and then I was like, oh, they're actually half-orcs. Let's just say they're half-orcs, and that they're just more genetically expressed as humans, but they still have that dark vision trait. And so the mark of finding is not really for humans and half-orcs. It's actually just half-orcs. And there's just some half-orcs that
okay.
just look more like humans.
I actually did something like that in my Avalon setting. If you have an Outlander from outside of Avalon, half-orc is much more bestial.
Right.
And you have other Outlanders that often make their way into Avalon that can have the half-orc, but those bestial traits are very minimal.
Right. It's
They genetically just express differently.
right. Exactly. Genetic expression. So, so when I'm and then Wandslingers and all these kinds of things, and I feel like 5e, one, it's just easier to run. It's a really elegant version of D&D, and I think Eberron kind of works well with it in terms of like assuming D&D-isms in the setting.
Nice.
I've struggled somewhat with some of the D&D-isms, trying to, I have to pull some of those things out when I play with Savage Worlds. Like, okay, that's not really, I don't need to convert that. That's a D&D-ism. I don't need to worry about that, So I appreciate Eberron and 5e, but yeah, I'll still default back to Savage Worlds. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Sean, you got anything else, man?
No, I think we should head on over to Die Roll.
Boys, I'll tell you what, thank you for that, because that was fucking eye-opening for me. That was really good. I love the discussion about the ubiquity, the power level, the breadth and scale of the magic and so forth. I think, personally, I've got a better vocabulary around what I mean when I say low magic now.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. Thank you both.
So Brett, real quick before we move on, what's your conclusion in terms of high versus low magic? What are those definitions for you now?
So I think right now, I think what we've talked about with Eberron reaches a low magic component. I think what I would say high magic is when the ubiquity and the power level are at a higher point. So higher point being, what do I say? Gods walk the earth. You've got known wizards and towers meeting constantly with demons and devils. This is a regular thing in a fantastic world. People are calling meteors from the sky. They're changing the face of the earth. Craziness. If you've ever played World of Darkness back in the old days, if you've read Mummy, for Christ's sake, that's high-end magic. Even Mage back in the day. So I would think that the lower magic, the stuff I like, is very much like what we just talked about with Eberron, where it exists because we need to have it. The power level is low. It is more character-driven than gear-driven type of adventuring. And the stories are basically, again, around the characters overcoming odds and becoming heroes. And when there is a really cool, powerful thing, it's a focal point. So that's my off the top of my head how I would say
I
it.
like it. Cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man.
Shall we, Sean?
Yeah. Come on, man. I gotta hit this damn button.
Do that.
Jesus.
It's
Right.
a touchpad and you can't hit the button.
206
I hate
episodes
when
in,
that
and you can't
happens.
get this right.
I cannot, man. Keeps everybody on their toes. All right, die roll.
I'm out. I'm out. You boys are in.
All right, Brett doesn't have any this week. I hammed it up a little bit. So, few I've got. I'll start off, and then Wayne and Christian have one or two themselves. Handbooker Helper. Did you guys see this? Handbooker Helper. It's a new show by Critical Role that they're going to go over rules and helps old and new players. And the first show starts August 29th, 2018. Looks interesting. I don't know if Mercer's going to be hosting that and going over that.
I saw his name associated with it. It's funny when I see things like that. Coming from a UX background, I'm like, okay, if you need a video series called Handbooker Helper for your rules,
Maybe you have a rules
maybe I have a
problem.
rules
Is that what you're saying?
problem. But I feel that way about every single RPG, so I'm not just picking on D&D. Savage Worlds even, it's like we see the same questions come up over and over again on forums and social media. It's like,
Right.
oh my god.
But what if I had a D4 and it exploded? Would I have a better chance for? Oh
Exactly.
my God,
No,
gonna
not
beat
that
you to
again.
death.
It's like, just shoot me in the face with a
9
hammer. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
9 flying ships battle maps for your Eberron campaign from Cosmic Cartographer. So if you want to check out Eberron and you want battle maps of flying ships to use in your campaign. There's 9 of them that you can choose from, which are pretty handy. Next one, Eberron Wiki. Wiki. So if you're looking for some information online, the Eberron Wiki could come in handy. And then my next one, Manifest Zone. I've said this before. I'll plug these guys' show. If you want to know about Eberron, tune into these gentlemen. They'll
Probably go
give you
listen
the
to that.
scoop.
See what they say.
What's that? What's that,
Probably
Wayne?
go listen to that. And see what they say.
See what they say. I hear they know a couple things.
Sean, this is supposed to be 2 to 4 miscellaneous points, man.
He's covering for me. He's
He's
covering
covering
for
for
me.
Brett,
I'm an
I guess.
overachiever.
All right.
I'm an
All right.
overachiever
All right.
at times, Christian.
He rolled a D4 and exploded. Fuck off. That's what happens.
Yeah. Savage Worlds rules, buddy.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Keith Baker's blog. So Keith, for those of you that aren't familiar with Keith Baker, he was the original developer of Eberron. And so he blogs on occasion about the world and different things about Eberron. So if you want to see what he's up to, check out his personal blog. There's the Eberron G Plus community. Aren't you? Are you the moderator and founder of that, Christian?
I am, but I'm going to be honest. There's not a lot of activity there. Like if you go to Eberron Enthusiasts, which I'm sorry, Wayne. I know that's one
No
of yours. There's just a lot more going on there, and you'll get.
Oh, the Eberron enthusiast community.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. And then lastly for me, Eberron Reddit. So if you're a Reddit fan and you want to get your scoop from that website, they've got an Eberron Reddit there as well. So that's all I got this week. Wayne, what do you want to pimp?
Well, you guys mentioned it, Eberron Enthusiasts. There's like anywhere from 5 to 10 new posts a day. It's on Facebook.
Nuts.
It's crazy. People are so excited, and they're actually really, really nice people. It's a very, 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 very welcome community. So if you're on Facebook and you want to learn a little more about Eberron and be inundated with questions and whatnot, Eberron Enthusiast is probably a great place to go.
This may be one of the only decent communities on Facebook, people. So check it out. Because Facebook is normally very toxic.
And
well,
Keith
yeah,
does
you know.
respond there, and he does post.
Yeah, he does.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
So if you're looking for like a specific lore thing that we haven't answered on Manifest Zone, go on there, maybe ask a question, and if Keith's got time, he usually does answer. This is a slight plug, I guess, for Keith and myself and Robert Aducci. Curtain Call, Sharn Adventure. We had a chance to go write something, and we wrote a first level adventure, about 4-hour play. We just went Electrum on DM's Guild. So, if you want to go check it out, be very happy. I would be very happy for you to do that, and please leave us a review.
Well done. Well done.
I really want to see some people like what they thought about it. Especially we really wanted to get this out, and there was ask for it in the community.
If there's one thing you're going to buy other than Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, it's Curtain Call.
I bought it, Wayne.
Thank you.
Now I've got to. You guys got me like all stoked and happy about this. I got to go buy a bunch of shit.
Yeah. Oh, never mind. Moving on.
Go ahead, Christian.
All right,
You're
I'm
up, Christian.
All right. So, one of the things I've found interesting with the release of Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron and 5e, 5e brought in a lot of returning players of D&D as well as a lot of new players to D&D. And so there's a lot of people who are just new to Eberron as a whole. And so I wanted to provide a link to my thing is going to be the Eberron archives from 3.5. This is like a ton of article just great content about how to think about Eberron, some mechanical stuff, and so on. Starting with the Gearing Up for Eberron articles that came out before Eberron was released. Eberron, Under the Glass, which is sort of here's how you look at Eberron differently from regular D&D. And then the Dragon Shards articles, which I don't even know how many there are, which are just, sort of additional details about the setting that you didn't get in the book. And so I wanted to put that out there because I don't think a lot of people know that exists. Most people will kind of link to even just the Dragon Shards, but a lot of those other categories of articles really have a ton of value in them. And I think it's really worth exploring and diving into that. So check that out. Yeah.
Sweet.
Awesome. So awesome. Where does everybody go to find, besides Manifest Zone? Wayne, where can other people find you online if they want to tune into what Wayne's got going on?
Probably the best way is if you're looking for Eberron stuff, get into the Eberron enthusiast stuff. I try to help out and answer some questions. I usually just post a link. Christian's the one that talks more about stuff. I just be like, here, take a look at this. Otherwise, I've got a Manifest Zone podcast. I do another podcast about Dark Sun called Bone Sun Obsidian. I'm not that active on Twitter or anything like that. But the best way, best way you tag me on something in Facebook or you take a look at some of the website stuff, and I'll try to respond best I can.
Christian, where do people find you, man? What's going on?
Yeah, well, for anybody who's interested in Savage World stuff, I'm primarily on the G+ Savage Worlds community. That is the official community for Savage Worlds. The Eberron enthusiasts have been hanging out a lot there recently for obvious reasons, as well as on the Facebook official Savage Worlds community. I kind of loiter there a little bit. I'm also on Twitter, but my Twitter is kind of a mix between some gaming stuff and some like web design and development stuff. So Twitter's kind of weird because you can't really compartmentalize as easily. So if you're interested in both of those things, you can find me on there. That's pretty much it. And then of course the Manifest Zone website, which is at manifest.zone.
Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on the show and helping me put Brett in his place.
I am in a place, and I have been put there indeed.
No, thanks for having us on. It's fun.
It's all with love. It's all with love.
You say that now, but boy,
Oh man,
that was good stuff.
Brett, what are we talking about next week, buddy?
You know what? I had a different idea, but George Sedgwick got my brain going with the moment of character death. He just mentioned it. We talked about it earlier briefly, so that's coming in, man. That's where we're going at.
All right. We'll have to check that one out. This has been another episode of Gaming ABS. Thank you to Wayne and Christian for both being on the show again, of course. All right. Well, I'm Sean.
And I'm Brett. Good night and good game and all.
This has been a Litterbox Studio production.